Hello, I'm Keith Spera from NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune. Welcome to Let's Talk. In a city renowned for its musical families, my guest today hails from one of the most accomplished, the Marsalis family. His discography as a saxophonist, band leader, and composer in both the jazz and classical realms spans dozens of albums, including his latest release, Belonging. In 2024, he moved back to New Orleans after many years of living in North Carolina, and he's slated to perform with his quartet at the 2025 New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival on Sunday, April 27th. Here to talk about all that and more is Branford Marsalis. Branford, welcome to Let's Talk.
Hey Keith, what's happening, man?
It's all good. I say you are living in New Orleans again, but in reality, you seem like you live on the road. I am very impressed that this deep into your career, you spend as much time out there on the road as you do.
It's a lot, but we're lucky to have the opportunity to play for as long as we have. And so you endure the road so you can have the experience of playing with great musicians.
Yeah, I mean, if you didn't enjoy the experience of playing with those guys, it would absolutely not be worth it, obviously, to be out there all that time and away from home.
Absolutely.
You moved back in 2024. You took on a role as the artistic director, at the Ellis Marsalis Center for Music in the Musicians Village, which of course is named for your father. But you didn't necessarily move back here to take that job, correct?
Correct.
So what were the motivations to come back after you'd been living in North Carolina for decades, raised your daughters there? Why was it the right time for you to come back to New Orleans?
I mean, the right time was 20 years ago, but it didn't work out when I wanted to move. And, my wife was like, no, I'm not moving down there. And I had to accept that. So, this is the right time. Kids are grown, and it's time to move forward. So here I am. So
as we speak, you've been here a little over a year. What have been your observations about the city since you moved back? Since you last lived here full time, which has been decades.
Decades. I left when I was 19. So I had really not had enough life experience at that time to have an emotional or intellectual understanding of the city at all. It was just the place that I grew up. Mm-hmm. And like people would always say, in my 20s and 30s, oh, I'm going to New Orleans. Can you recommend some restaurants? I'm like, yeah, 8318 Hickory Street. Because, we ate at home all the time. My mom was a great cook. So a lot of those experiences that I have now as a much older person going to restaurants, I'm doing that. Other than the times when I would come home and go to a restaurant, but the experience, I'm experiencing it really for the first time.
You're discovering New Orleans, you're discovering your hometown again for the first time since being here.
Yeah, in a different way. As a kid, you just take everything for granted. We would, we didn't have a car. We were taking the bus everywhere, and then friends would pick you up. And then I got a car to go to band rehearsal with this band, The Creators. I was with the Hamilton Brothers. What's happening, fellas? But we used to rehearse at their house on Mazan Street in Upper Ninth Ward, not far from where the center is. Mm. And but when you're young, you go to school, you come home. You go to practice, you come home. You go to a gig, you come home. I wasn't really hanging out in socializing in the way that I would as an adult.
Have you gotten to do some of that since you've been in town? Because you're on the road so much. It seems like you're just here for little spurts.
Unfortunately, that's the reality. I'm just here for little spurts.
Right.
But try to make the most of it when I get home.
Right. Well, it just prolongs the amount of time you'll get to rediscover your hometown.
Yes, absolutely.
At this pace, you'll be rediscovering it for years. So
decades.
Over at the center, as artistic director, do you feel like that center has lived up to its potential? Do you have grander plans for it? Just what are your thoughts on what's going on over there and what should be going on?
I think what's going on there should be going on there because we're not we're not trying to create musicians. I mean, musicians, we find our way. We become musicians. We don't need institutions for that. But as much as, it's not a word that it's overused and not a phrase that I really like right now, but safe space. I mean, it's a safe space for a lot of kids who would otherwise be at home by themselves until their parents got home from work or their parent gets home from work. And we use instruments as a way to lure the kids in. They do their homework there. All of the snacks are healthy snacks, no candies, no sweets, fruits and vegetables. So I think that is the most important part of the experience there, is to use music as an additional tool to enhance academic possibilities, because we will always need advocates for non-popular music. We will always need advocates, and if some of these kids go on to become very successful in the business world, perhaps they'll look fondly on their time at the center and become advocates for other musicians who usually need that kind of support.
Absolutely. You and your buddy Harry Connick Jr. were sort of the driving force behind the Musicians Village, which was developed after Hurricane Katrina there in the Ninth Ward. Do you feel like the village, 20 years since the storm now, just about, has the village itself lived up to its potential?
Neither of us did this for credit. So we played concerts and people gave money and people actually flew here and helped build homes and do all of these things. So once the keys were given to the residents, the rest of it is up to the residents. I don't come in to look and see what they're doing and all that. It was when Katrina happened, when the floods ran over the city, I was essentially silent for about 3 or 4 days when these press requests came in, because I was watching the television. It was like, well, whose fault is it? Who do you blame? Are you angry? These are all stupid ideas to me. They have entertainment value, but they serve no purpose. So my manager called and said, the press is asking for you. I said, so what am I going to tell them? What are we going to do? I mean, I'll talk to them when we have a plan on doing something, but I'm not out there to point fingers and do this, whatever that melodramatic kind of, well, I forgot what that word is, reality television kind of nonsense. So Harry came up with this idea. He had this relationship with Habitat for Humanity, and we should go out there and raise funds. And they talked Habitat into using gig books for income verification as opposed to the traditional realities, which are check stubs and financial disclosures and all these things. And they agreed, and it allowed us to do something meaningful, something that I would be proud of having a hand in, but not something I was interested in taking the credit for. So once it was done, then I was done. And it's not something I would ever bring up, because it's not why we did it.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, plenty of musicians still living there now, 20 years on. If you're just tuning in, my guest today is musician Branford Marsalis. Your latest record, Belonging, is, I guess the word is reinterpretation, maybe, of the Keith Jarrett album, the 1974 album that Keith Jarrett put out on the ECM label, called Belonging as well. Is that the right word? Do we call it a reinterpretation? Because you're doing basically the same material. Obviously some similarities, but some differences.
I don't. I played in a cover band for a long time. And the history of jazz, particularly in the 1940s, 1950s, all these musicians made their reputations playing cover tunes, playing standard song form pop tunes of the time. It's just a record that's very meaningful to all of us individually. And we talked about it. And we recorded one of the songs on the record, a song called Wind Up. We recorded it on our last record called The Secret Between the Shadow and the Soul.
Right, 6 years ago, I think, 2019, that record came out.
Yeah. And our bassist, Eric Rivas, said, man, we should just record the whole record. And when he said it, I said, that's a great idea. We should. And that was it. That was the impetus of it. It wasn't like we sat around and drew up a plan, how are we going to make it different than the way that those guys played it? I mean, I already knew it would be different because we have different cultural experiences. We have different sonic experiences. And we decided we wanted to do it, and then the pandemic hit and everything shut down, and then we came back. And the first year in late 2021, early 22, it just took us months to reestablish what I felt was our connective tissue.
Within the quartet, within your quartet.
Yeah. It just didn't sound right. It didn't feel right. And we finally had the opportunity to play in San Francisco on successive nights. And I think being in the same place 3 nights in a row, 4 nights in a row, by the third night, I said, oh, we're back. All right, cool. And then I was okay. But it took, we didn't play for a year and a half. And it was just hard. There's kind of symbiosis, a sonic symbiosis that when the band's clicking, I know it. And I wasn't interested in doing anything until that resolved itself.
Right, until you guys were clicking again. Well, yeah. I think you definitely followed the blueprint of the original. I think on the title track, on Belonging, on Keith Jarrett's version, the sax comes in like about 40 seconds into the song, and that's the same on your version. So, I mean, but then you guys take it, I think it's a much longer version than you guys do of it. So,
well, it's kind of, the formula is kind of like the way, if you listen to music from the 1920s, the band always plays the melody before the singer sings the melody. Mm-hmm. That's a big difference between popular songs in the 20s and 30s, early 30s, and afterwards, when it went to 8-bar melodic intro and then the singer starts singing. So in the original version, Keith states the melody the first time, and then Jan Garbarek, the saxophone player, repeats the melody the second time. And they don't play solos on it. They play the melody 3 times in the song. So, but when we were listening to the record, because we grew up in we had 40 years or 50 years in between when that was actually recorded, we felt comfortable that we could play all of these songs and play interesting solos on the chord changes and all of that, and as opposed to just playing the melody and having it in there.
Absolutely. Well, it's funny, when that record came out in '74, I mean, you didn't appreciate it. You weren't really a jazz fan at the time. You were more of an R&B guy. I mean, you were, 14 years old when that record came out?
Exactly. So. I was a funketeer.
A funketeer.
I was a funketeer.
More of the George Clinton school than the Keith Jarrett school, I guess, at that point.
Absolutely. And that was the year. That was the year. That was the year I heard Mothership Connection, 74. I'm going in this direction for a while. This is going to be fun. And joined the band. We had a great time.
But then the Jarrett album, you heard that years later? Yeah.
I didn't hear the Keith Jarrett. Kenny Kirkland, fantastic piano player. He introduced me to the record. To not that record. There's a record, the subsequent record called My Song. Kenny was saying, oh, you should, check out this Keith Jarrett stuff. It's great. But, everybody was bragging about the Cone Concerts, which was this record that Keith released on ECM. I never really liked it. I said, why is everybody thinking this is such a great record? I don't like this record. And I did what young people, dumb people do. I took this one record and I made it the metaphor for all of his music and said, I don't want to hear that. I heard him once. At least, now that I'm older, I don't do that, but I know people my age who still do that. And Kenny put the headphones on my head on an airplane, and before I could react, the music started, and I was like, man, this is great. Oh, he went to grab the headphones away, and I put my hands on him to keep him there, and he laughed. He says, I told you, man. I told you this is your thing. And then I went and retroactively bought belonging. And yeah, I was like, wow, that's the one that really, really resonated with me.
And then you were off to the races.
Off to the races. So that was like 1987, 86, around that time.
All right, and there's no turning back at that point. If you're just tuning in, my guest today is saxophonist Branford Marsalis. Yeah, thinking about you booked at the Jazz Fest here coming up, I was reminded of the show you did, I think it was in 2019, with your father and your brothers out there at the Jazz Tent. What a remarkable moment that was for all of you guys to be together on stage at Jazz Fest. And I think that happened a lot less frequently than people would imagine, huh?
Yeah, well, Winton has I have a band. I have 5 people who work with me, and I'm kind of responsible for them. And we have a touring group, so we work a lot. Winton has a much larger band, and he's responsible for them, and that kind of interferes with all these other realities. Delphio has his own band, and they're touring. And my dad had a hip problem, which made touring very problematic for him. He had this hip that got worse and worse and worse, and he was walking around with a walker, and he didn't like traveling that much. So it really made it hard for those things to happen once the hip started really, because prior to that, we would do these family little 2-week tours. We'd block out the time months in advance, but when the hip problem started, he really didn't want to go out there. So it was great. I'm glad we did it, particularly since he died a year later. I was really glad that we played.
That's right. It was exactly a year after that show in April of 2020, I think, when he passed away. So,
yep.
You're right. That's wonderful to have that, to have had that happen at the festival in front of such an appreciative audience. That's a great note for his legacy at Jazz Fest to end on, I think, for sure. It's interesting. We talked earlier about Harry Connick Jr., about you guys partnering on Habitat. You guys share a manager. I think it's a lost opportunity that you guys haven't done a buddy picture. I think that would be brilliant.
Oh my God! Now I know what you're talking about. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're a little long in the tooth for that now. So that moment is past. I would have been fun. Oh, I don't know. Yeah. Like me and Harry together is. I think 30% of the population would love it and 30 would absolutely hate it, because I didn't know Harry was like that. I didn't know Branford was like that. My manager makes sure that we're generally apart, because once we get together and start talking, the conversations can go in very interesting directions.
You bring out the best and the worst in each other.
It's actually the best, but it can be perceived as the worst by others.
Oh, man. The other day I found an old vinyl copy of Sting's Dream of the Blue Turtle. And I was reminded of just how instrumental you were in the sound of those early solo Sting records, man. Your sax is really one of the defining audio signatures of those records.
Well, it's really, that was Sting's decision, and people always, it's a funny thing, we like to use euphemisms all the time. So now they say, oh, you've collaborated with these people. I wasn't collaborating with Sting. Sting said, you play here. I said, okay. And he says, oh, that's really good. Play here. It was Sting's project and Sting's record across the board. I have an idea, maybe the sax should be played here, but it wasn't like, oh, Sting, you need to change those lyrics. I don't know about that melody. It was not a collaboration. And it was really cool that he trusted us and trusted me enough to play. And then, when he wanted something different, he would explain it to me or sing it to me, and I'd play it. And it was great. We had a good time. It was a great process.
So he wasn't writing out the solos, though. You were coming up with those solos on your own. Those are your.
Well, he wasn't writing out the solos, but sometimes I was playing melodies, and he would say, I want you to play this melody. I want you to play that melody. And then he would say, play a solo here. He was in charge of it. It wasn't like, okay, rock star, have a seat over there, and we'll take care of it from here. It was not that. He was in charge of it. He was in charge of it, and he controlled the direction of it. So I thought it was really cool that he hired us, and he liked what we were doing enough to include us to that degree.
Yeah, and you jumped on the 2021 album that he did, The Bridge, too. You had a little spot on that. So I mean, that relationship has gone on for many years at this point.
Yeah, that's my dude. That's my dude. And when he needs me, he calls me, and I'll show up. We'll hook it up. It'd be cool.
Awesome. This year, 2025, is also the 30th anniversary of when you left The Tonight Show as musical director. Did you ever have any second thoughts about that decision to step away in the last 30 years?
No, not second thought. Sometimes I look back and say, boy, it would have been fun to hang out there a little longer. But the reality was that the one thing that it taught me very quickly is that I'm a player. And there's a point where you can feel the music slipping from your fingers or from your brain. My father had this saying, the thing you do most is the thing you do best. And playing popular songs in 2-minute stints 4 or 5 times a night. It's not the hardest thing in the world, and it's very, it's a very generous place to be. But after a year of that, year and a half of that, you have to make a decision on whether you want to be a player or whether you're cool just, being on a television show and being richly rewarded for doing that experience. And 10 years from now, 15 years from now, what are you going to do? So it was just hard for me. I realized it helped me realize that at the end of the day, I'm a player. And if I'm going to walk away from this, then I can never complain about money ever again because I had this opportunity to make a lot of it and I walked away from it.
Right.
So and the hardships of playing and all of these things, I'm choosing all of these things. And my father was like, well, if you leave, I don't want to hear nothing out of you about like how hard it is out there because you chose this. And he was totally right. And I don't regret that decision. I love being a player. I love being, 65 years old and still kind of relevant. Because in popular culture, I most certainly would not be relevant right now.
If you were?
I was in popular culture, right? I would certainly not be relevant right now at my age.
Right.
It moves on. It cannibalizes old people for the most part. A few slip through the cracks, but it grinds you up and makes way for the young people. And I'm not saying it in a pejorative sense.
Right.
I'm just saying, who watches TV? Who wants to, there's all these things. What do people my age watch? We need more of this, sponsorship, blah, blah, blah. There's a whole mechanism. And that's part of the game when you sign up for that. But I'm glad to be, where I am in this situation.
That sounds like such a fatherly thing to say, like, son, are you sure you want to walk away from this job? I mean, that's like a classic father perspective on it. Son, think about this twice.
Yeah. No, he didn't say that. He didn't say think about it twice. He said, all right, because he was, I think he wanted me to leave. But he said, but if you leave, these are the realities of you leaving. The same choice he made a long time ago when Wynton would say, man, does it make you mad that like you playing this complicated music and, and then you got guys playing real simple music and making all this money. Does that bother you? He said, I made my choice. And that was it.
And that was it.
But then, when I moved to New York and I meet some of the older musicians and they were complaining about a lack of recognition or this or that or the other, mad at Kenny G or, I just like, hey, man, we made our choice. Which is what my old man said. We made our choice. Shut up. This is what we chose. You can't do both things. You can't have it both ways. So just be quiet and do your thing.
And go from there. Really got 3 minutes left. I have to mention 40th anniversary this summer of the Live Aid show, which I didn't realize you did that gig with both Sting and Phil Collins in London. Is that right?
Almost right. I'd agreed to play in Sting's band, and he says, "Come to London with me. We're going to do Live Aid." And I'm like, "Okay, great." And I got to see all the rock stars, and Elton John, who was my hero. I got to see him, and and then after that, Sting invited Phil to sing a song with him. So it wasn't like I played with Sting's band and then Phil's band. We did a thing where we played Roxanne. It was just he and I. And then Phil came up on a song, and I think Phil played piano and sang. I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure he played piano and sang, and it was just the three of us playing this song.
Okay. God, I mean, I am a little stunned when I realized that it's been 40 years since that gig happened.
Bro, we old, man. Get over yourself.
Hey, look, I was still in high school when it happened, all right? So I experienced it as a high schooler, so. Well, all right. Like I said, the life you've chosen, your plan is to, in the last 90 seconds here, your plan is to kind of keep on keeping on like you're doing, playing as many road gigs as you do, putting out records. You don't stop.
Yeah. It's like the old joke, the milkman wins $1 million in the lottery. They say, "What are you going to do with all that money?" He said, "I'm just going to feed the cows till the money runs out." That's it.
So you're going to keep feeding the road, feeding your quartet, doing it, rolling. So,
until we don't, whenever that is.
I don't know how often you look at your Wikipedia page, but according to Wikipedia, you still live in Durham, North Carolina. So you may want to.
I don't know. I've never. I didn't create the page. I didn't invent the page. The only thing I remember about my Wikipedia page is many years ago now, some guy put a picture up of some big muscle-bound guy with an afro, and it says, "Branford Marsalis, circa 1977, New York City." And I was like, man, this is great. I've never looked like that in my life. My manager was livid. She took the picture down. The guy puts the picture up again. So I literally had to email this guy and say, "Man, I really appreciate that you think that that's me, but it most definitely is not." And he said, "I could have sworn I saw you in a club in New York City." I said, "Sir, I was a 17-year-old junior in high school in New Orleans." So that, at that point, I'm like, well, anybody can put up whatever they want. Yeah, let them do it. But I'm not going to go in there and try to correct stuff in there, because it's just, that was like benevolent disinformation. And now we live in the age of it where everybody's just lying their asses off. So, let it be what it'll be.
Take the benevolent disinformation. That's better than a lot.
There you go. There you go.
Well, Branford, I appreciate this, man. This has been a lot of fun. I wish you much success with the new record and with the never-ending road that you're on.
Yeah, you're right, bro. I appreciate you, Keith.
All right. Once again, it's been Branford Marsalis. I am Keith Spera. I'll see you again next time on Let's Talk.